Coaches, including UCLA's Mick Cronin, have complained about the travel schedule for his squad. Wisconsin's Greg Gard says too much is made of it.
We're flying around playing basketball. This isn't, right? This isn't, there's much more difficult things in life that you could be doing than changing time zones playing basketball. So I don't make a big deal out of it because I don't think it's a big deal. Go play where they want us to play next.
Maryland, Wisconsin go in ranked number 17th in the country, a jump of one spot from last week.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Rural Mutual is the #1 farm insurer in Wisconsin for a good reason. As a company founded by farmers, they understand the ag industry and its challenges. Local agents offer farm families the best advice and personalized coverage. Visit ruralmutual.com to find an agent near you.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Brewers announced this morning that John Axford going to be added to the team's Wall of Honor in a ceremony this upcoming season. He was the 2011 winner of the NL Reliever of the Year award, spent 6 years with the Brewers. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
The line judge on the far side, initially his spot was coming in about a foot inside the 40. Then the near side linesman came in and said he was short of it. They had two different marks. Let's see what they come with.
After review, the moving of the field stands as called. It'll be first down in Kansas City.
Wow. I mean, you got to give, that's so close. It's whatever the call was, I don't think you could overturn it. Kansas City came in with a plan. Nobody could stop this. Here's the line. Does the ball cross that definitively? Wow.
Phil.
How did you see it, Gene?
I felt like he gained it by about a third of the football, Jim. That was just my take on the play. Tough play.
I agree. But the Chiefs take over on downs.
It's not fun. But to beat the champs, you gotta beat the champs, you gotta beat the champs, and we didn't do it tonight.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Two bits of sound that I cut up and put in the intro there. The play-by-play with Nance and Romo and Gene's territory. I put that in not because I'm hung up on it. I put it in because it's a big talking point today. Anytime the Chiefs win, especially the last couple of weeks, we've found a way to circle certain calls and certain plays as well. Did the Chiefs get lucky here? Yeah, probably. The winning team normally gets lucky. I think if you look inch by inch through every game, you can find instances of good luck and bad luck. But it's a big part of the story, so I put it in there. The quote, the other soundbite that you heard was Josh Allen, who just sounds sad. And I don't blame him. I'm sad for him. Not necessarily because he played better than Mahomes yesterday. He's now 0-4. I believe that's the number, right? 0-4 against Mahomes in the postseason. I think by and large, in most of those games, Mahomes has played just a little bit better. But that's not to say that Josh Allen should never have a shot at playing in a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like most of the time in sports, even when there's the dominant team or the dominant star player, even the guys who were like the second best quarterback or the third best quarterback, the Josh Allens historically have typically gotten at least one shot to go in a Super Bowl. Peyton Manning did, right? That 1 year with the Colts. Matt Ryan did. There's another example. Matt Ryan, right, had a shot in 2016. Typically, the other guys get a shot. And I feel like Josh Allen, in at least 2 or 3 of the 4 games, my memory isn't perfect, but at least in some of these games, feel like he's played well enough to deserve a shot, especially when they were up, whatever it was, with 13 or 14 seconds left and the defense gave up the field goal. Like, I'm bummed for Josh Allen. He's not as good as Mahomes. I'm not saying that he should be just given a chance, but I feel like he's played well enough. So I'm bummed for him, even though I think the Chiefs are better and Mahomes is better. And that's why they're 4-0 against Josh Allen and the Bills. So that's where we'll start. We'll start tonight's show by reacting to Championship Sunday, the AFC and the NFC Championship games yesterday. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. I hope you had a banging weekend, a 3-day weekend for our purposes because I was off on Friday. I was up in the UP, which was very fun. Thank you, Tyler, on the live stream for asking. If you want details, ask about them in the mailbag. We got the Monday mailbag coming up at 5:50 between Championship Sunday and the Packers. And I want to talk a little Badgers basketball too yet, because buried in this weekend was the Badgers absolutely just taking it to Nebraska. I mean, they shoved it down Nebraska's throat. They jumped out to a huge lead, let Nebraska come back, and then blasted them again for the rest of the game. Really fun game. So I want to talk about that at least a little bit. If you want to hear details on Marquette, about the UP, you got to ask about it in the mailbag. I will accept your questions. GrantBills21@gmail.com. Also, a bit of Packers news that I want to discuss tonight. Tom Silverstein with some really good reporting at the Journal Sentinel. And we'll dig into that maybe at 4:30 when we've properly reacted to what we saw yesterday. 608-321-1670. Already a caller or two on hold. I will get to you after the first break very, very quickly. I promise. You could text that number, call that number, and comment on YouTube and Facebook. The Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bill streams on Twitter as well, at Wisco Grant. Producer Austin texted me on Friday because I was off and he was running Bill's show, but we always do picks. So Austin texted me, he said, hey, we need your picks for Bill's show. And I replied, Buffalo, parentheses, will be wrong, and Philly. I kind of thought I knew the Chiefs would, for whatever reason, I wanted to pick Buffalo, even though deep down I knew they were going to lose. And as I clarified on Twitter, sometimes I will occasionally make picks that I know are wrong, just so I don't upstage Bill. It's an important part of the producer job. I want to do a good job, but not too good of a job. I don't want to upstage Bill. So that's actually Galaxy Brain, why I picked Buffalo yesterday. The Eagles, let's start. We'll go chronologically. The Eagles are just better. Their roster is better than the Packers, better than the Commanders. Last week, and after the Packers game as well, I kept saying the Eagles don't have a weakness. They don't have a spot where it's like, well, if you can make hay there, like they really have a weakness. Their passing game comes and goes. That's maybe the weakest area of their team, but their passing game has Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, and Dallas Goedert. It's not like, well, if they can make it work with Juju Smith-Schuster and I don't know, N'Keal Harry and Kadarius Toney. No, they have bona fide superstars at wide receivers, and that's probably the weakest part of their team. And I don't love their quarterback. There's plenty of numbers to back up why you maybe shouldn't love Jalen Hurts, but he's played in a ton of big moments. He played at a really high level in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. It's not like he hasn't been there, done that. He's not Jimmy G. You know what I mean? He can toss the ball around when he is right and when he's feeling good. That's not all the time, but he's shown that he can do it, and he's shown that he can do it in the biggest moments. I don't think Washington was exposed. I don't think that they were proven to be frauds. I don't think after this game yesterday, and Philly did score 55. Like it was a commanding. I mean, they kind of did whatever they want on offense, which against Washington's defense was not a total surprise. I mean, Jared Goff and the Lions, they turned the ball over a couple of times a week ago, and they still scored, 35, 40 points? So we knew Washington's defense wasn't great, but I do not, and I don't think most folks after yesterday's NFC Championship game go, well, the Commanders, they had a nice little run, but they were kind of frauds. They were exposed. No, they're not as good as Philly, but we knew that coming in. That's why they were dogs, right? I say that all the time. That's why this team is an underdog. They're not as good. It's baked in, right? But I thought Jaden Daniels was excellent yesterday. He didn't look overwhelmed. He didn't look like maybe he had been playing above himself the last couple of weeks. He looked great, right? Washington just doesn't have the same level of talent Philadelphia has. And they had some bad fumbles and another blunder on a kick return. These players who are returning kicks, I swear, I mean, they're just terrorists. Keyshawn Nixon bringing the ball out 8 yards deep. And then yesterday, I don't remember who the player was returning it for Washington, like tries to juke, runs right into a guy. Like you have 10, take the kicker out. Huge human beings, muscular, tall. These are the modern day gladiators. And a lot of these guys on kick coverage, like this is their shot. Not all of them, but a lot of these players are special teams players. This is their chance to blast someone. And so many of these kick returners, Keyshawn Nixon and whoever that guy was for Washington yesterday, they just bring the ball out. La-di-da-di-da-di-da. You are going to get popped. You're going to get leveled. Protect yourself. Go down. Or just accept the touchback when you can. It just drives me nuts. It's an area of a football game where you can't really make much hay, but you can really hurt yourself. The Packers did it. The Commanders did it. Not to mention a couple just bad fumbles and bad mistakes that you can't win as the road underdog, especially the rookie quarterback, who was maybe the bright spot of their team yesterday. He was awesome. Not surprised the Eagles won. They were actually the one team from the weekend I did not want to see win. And I guess it's a personal thing. It's not the city of Philadelphia that I'm against. A lot of people are like, oh, Philly fans are trash. I don't want to. Actually, I don't have a problem with the city. I don't really have a problem with the fans. I don't like the team. We saw them in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. I think the tush push is boring. They're on the goal line trying to gimmick motion from the defensive line. Like, just snap the ball and play football. I don't want to see Jalen Hurts hammerhead his way up and down the field 1 yard at a time. I just not interested. The Eagles were the one team from the weekend that I was like, I would like to prefer that team to lose. I prefer if they lose. You know what I mean? A lot of people felt that way about the Chiefs. And we could talk about the AFC Championship game a little bit too. I explained this last week. I think I've been saying this. This has been my messaging for the last couple of weeks. I'm not rooting for Kansas City, but I'm not rooting against them like a lot of you are. Like a lot of folks. I don't say you people. I just mean people. A lot of people don't want to see the Chiefs in another Super Bowl. I don't really care. It would have been cool to see Buffalo. That would have been new. That would have been fun. Would have been a win for me. Or we get to see the Chiefs again. Historical element, going for 3 in a row, chasing Brady. And everyone gets mad, which is funny. Right? I think it's funny the way that everyone hates it. I think it's good for entertainment value. Super teams are good for entertainment value because people get riled up and they cheer against them, and it gets us bent out of shape about the officials or what the commentators are saying or Taylor Swift in the box. I just think it's good entertainment value. So it's a win-win. The AFC Championship game was for me yesterday. Even if we get the Bills or even if we get the Chiefs, doesn't really matter, right? And adding to the theater, of course, you have that first down call. That was the bit of audio that you heard in the intro. It was kind of controversial, especially when all of the commentators, including Gene Steratore, the rules analyst, was like, yep, looks like you got it. Anyways, first down Chiefs, here we go. You know what I mean? And then there was the catch that a lot of people thought was a drop by Xavier Worthy in the end zone. We're breaking that down to the nth degree, right? It's great theater. Gets people riled up, which is good for talk radio. It's good for sports media. And it's good for the next 2 weeks of buildup leading into the Super Bowl, right? I know people are talking about the refs. They're talking about Mahomes. They're talking about... This is what my takeaway was from... I almost said the Patriots, from the Chiefs winning yesterday. Patrick Mahomes through 7 seasons so far in the NFL. Lost in the AFC Championship game to Tom Brady as a first-year starter, second-year player. Should have won if D Ford just checks with the line judge. Whatever. Won the Super Bowl the next year against the Niners. Lost the Super Bowl the year after against the Bucks. Then lost in the AFC Championship game to the Bengals in overtime, right, I believe. Then won the Super Bowl against the Eagles, won the Super Bowl against the Niners, now back in the Super Bowl again. That's his career through 7 seasons. You can compare his win pace, wins in the regular season, wins in the playoffs, Super Bowl appearances. You can compare his win pace to Brady. And I noticed Romo yesterday during the broadcast invoking Brady's name a couple of times, which I think has to probably make Patriots fans not so thrilled. Right? Because he's still, even if Mahomes wins this year, this will be his 4th Super Bowl. Still got to win 3 more to catch Brady. It's not like he's close. He is on pace, but he's not close. So if I was a Patriots fan and I hear Tony Romo saying, man, very Brady-like, or he's starting to approach Brady, it's like, wait. So I think that gets people stirred up probably in New England. Throw the numbers out. Through 7 years, this is what he's done. Through 6-7 years in the playoffs, this is what he's done. Throw all of that out. Throw the numbers, throw the statistics. And if you listen to the show, you know that numbers just don't stick in my brain. It's not really what I'm going for in sports, except for maybe a little bit in baseball. Use your eyes. Forget about the numbers and the wins and the losses. Just use your eyes and use your brain to think about what we watched yesterday, what it looked like yesterday. At the end of the game, when the Bills need a stop, they need to get Mahomes off the field. They need to prevent the Chiefs from getting a first down or the game is over. What did the Chiefs do? What did it look? Not just, they got the first down. Great. No. What did they do? How did they do that? Some crossing route, some little bubble swing pass, some slant, and the guy is always open. And Mahomes always hits him right in the hands, yards after the catch. It's the Patriots. It has started to look like the Patriots. It's not just that they're winning and succeeding in the playoffs on the level that the Patriots did. It's starting to look like it looked with the Patriots. It's not this 30, 40-yard aerial assault to Tyreek Hill No, Now, they find ways to manufacture big plays here and there, but it's not what it looks like. It doesn't look like it looked like with Tyreek Hill in 2018, 2019. This is evolved. This has changed to, okay, it's 3rd and 6. How do we get 8 yards? We know the route we want to go to. We know how we're going to get that guy open. Mahomes knows when the ball needs to be delivered, and it's going to be right in the breadbasket, and the player's going to run for the first down. And it's going to look easy. It's going to look like, why can't every other team in football do that when they need to do that? That was what was so maddening about watching the Patriots at the end. And as a younger, more immature sports fan, my college years, I would watch Brady and I'd pull my hair out. He's not doing anything special. He's not doing anything impressive. That doesn't take athleticism. That doesn't take arm talent. That doesn't take improvisational ability. He's just standing in the pocket, dumping the ball off. And the last couple of years, that's actually why it was impressive. That's actually why the Patriots were impossible to beat, is they didn't rely on all that other stuff. What's the right play call? When should we run that play call? And we're going to execute the play call perfectly. And it's not going to be some fancy 30-yard bomb into triple covers. No, it's going to be a little swing pass. It's going to be a little crossing route. And everyone at home watching on TV is going to think, how did he get so open? How did that happen? Because that's what the Patriots did at the end. So it's not just that the Chiefs are winning on the same pace and with the same frequency. They're not just enjoying the same success in the postseason that the Patriots enjoyed for the longest time. Now it looks the same. Now when you squint, if you try to just ignore the red on the jerseys, you're like, my God, is this the Patriots? It even looks like it looked with the Patriots at the end. And I think that's really impressive. They're not relying on Patrick Mahomes' ability to run around and uncork one down the field to Tyreek Hill. It's just surgical, and it feels inevitable, and it felt inevitable, and it looked surgical at the end with Brady. The parallels. It's not just the wins and the losses anymore. It even looks the same. 608-321-1670 if you have thoughts on Championship Sunday. I'll get to you next. I have some Packers news for you at 4:35. More of the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's just so hard to get to the Super Bowl, and I don't take it for granted. And to be able to do it again at Arrowhead was special. I mean, last year it was awesome. You get there and you win it, but you're at a different stadium. And then being able to win it at Arrowhead, and then you get that trophy on that stage, and you look around, and there's not a seat empty. It is a special place, and I'm glad that I get to be a part of Chiefs Kingdom and here in Kansas City because these moments that I'll have for the rest of my life.
That's Patrick Mahomes, if you couldn't tell by the voice, after the game yesterday. I don't really have a problem with the Chiefs. I completely understand why lots of folks are annoyed with them and would like to see any other team in the Super Bowl. I get it. But as someone, for whatever reason, who isn't really bothered by the whole Chiefs thing, it makes for great entertainment. Getting an entire fan base, an entire country, really, to hate a team and to cheer against them, that's good for entertainment, especially in the sports talk world. So I'm all about it. If you have thoughts on yesterday's championship games, I'll take your call now. I got some Packers news regarding Rich Bisaccia. We'll get to that coming up at 4:35. 608-321-1670 to your calls as promised. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Good afternoon, Grant. It's Badger Bloodies.
Good afternoon, Badger Bloody. It's been a little bit since we've connected.
Yeah, for sure. I am out there listening, but yeah, definitely been doing a little more interacting in the Twitter sphere.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, wanted to call in. I lost my father on Friday. He passed away, sadly, at the ripe old age of 88. So thank you.
That is a ripe old age. That's a heck of a run, but I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. Yeah, he had a long, full life. My sister and I were with him in his final hours. He passed peacefully in his sleep. Basically, all you can ask for in life.
True.
But I wanted to share a little anecdote. He was admitted to the hospital up in Ashland last weekend, and of course, I get the news, and I rushed up there as fast as I can. And I walk in, and I'm looking for how to get up to the patient wing, and I walk into the elevator, and there he is in a hospital bed, and they had been doing some tests on him on the first floor. And I go, oh, just the man I'm looking for. And he says, oh, who is that? Who's that? I said, it's me, Dad. It's your son. He goes, oh, how'd the Badgers do?
Oh,
and I go, they won, Dad. They won, Dad. They beat USC. He goes, oh, good. How much? I said, 15 points. They won by 15. Oh, good. And then he kind of just got wheeled away. And I just thought that was so funny that literally the first thing he asked was how the Badgers did. And I'd be up, and he was a lifelong Packers and Badgers fan. Brewers and Bucks as well, but Badgers and Packers are really what he got on the radio, mostly up in the Northwoods. And that's where I got my love of radio. And that's, I think a really important thing now that most people consume sports media on screens. He never watched games. Radio was always his preferred medium. So I really think that's where I got my love of that. So yeah, it was nice kind of sitting by his bed that day and reading him Big Ten basketball scores and keeping him updated on the NFL football playoffs. And yeah, I just really appreciate, how deep Wisconsin sports runs and just having that bond with my father. And I know a lot of people in their own families feel the same way. So I just wanted to call and share that.
Hell yeah. That's an awesome story. I'm sorry to hear about your dad. It's nice that you got those memories at the end. That's Badger Bloody. Appreciate the call. I'm sure he enjoyed watching the Badgers stuff it down Nebraska's throat yesterday and the throat of Connor Essegian, the Connor Essegian, we talked about this a little bit with Ebo this morning, and we could do some Badgers basketball stuff in hour number 2. Yesterday was a perfect example of why he's not here anymore. The Badgers have lots of guys who are better, who can shoot threes and do other things, and they're better at shooting threes. The game started as bomb. I didn't watch the game live yesterday because I was driving. I got home, I watched the highlights in between the football games, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, this team in one afternoon will give you more highlights than some previous teams would give you in an entire year, right? They stuffed it down Nebraska's throat. And if anyone ever needed a reason, it's like, man, why'd they let Connor Essegian go? Just the game yesterday. Just watch, or any of the games. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, it's Cone.
Hey, Cone. How you doing?
Just wanted to give a shout out to Badger Bloody. Sorry about the loss of his father. Sounds like a great man.
Yeah, sounds like an excellent man. What did they beat USC? I'm glad he asked about USC and not UCLA. That would have been more of a bummer, but it sounds like Badger Bloody's father, even in that instance, would probably say something like, well, they were due. They'd won 7 in a row. Seemed like a reasonable, good-minded sports fan.
Yeah, he seemed pretty tapped into what was going on. So he's not just a casual that sees a loss and is, going to fire guard.
He's not going to overreact. Yeah, exactly. You're right. That's a good take.
I just want to stay on Badger basketball for a second and kind of loop it into a larger take about kind of the state of Wisconsin coaching in general. You look at the 4 teams we have in the state right now: Packers, Badger basketball, Brewers, and Bucks. I would say 2 are trending in the right direction and 2 are a little shaky. The 2 that are shaky are the Packers and the Bucks, and the 2 that are trending in the right direction are obviously the Brewers and Badger basketball. And I think one thing that separates them into 2 different buckets is accountability at the head coaching level. Pat Murphy, not afraid to call out his guys, tells it how it is. Greg Gard, definitely not afraid to call out his guys. Stephen Crowell, he's been amazing. Taking subtle shots at Mick Cronin after the press conference.
Yep.
That's accountability. And you look at Matt LaFleur on the flip side, he's laughing about Keyshawn Nixon saying he wants to quit his main job and be cornerback 1. And then, accountability in the NBA is completely gone. So it really doesn't matter what.
That's not even worth discussing. Yeah.
Right. So I just think accountability is so important as a head coach, and you're really seeing it with Greg Gard and Pat Murphy, and you're just really not seeing it with LaFleur, and then obviously in the NBA.
So LaFleur, we're going to talk about this in 10 minutes. That's a great call, Cone. I appreciate it. LaFleur made a couple tweaks to his staff. They fired Jason Reberovich, their outside linebackers coach turned defensive line coach with the scheme changes last year. Luke Getsy is back. Adam Stenovich seems like he will be retained. They're also retaining Rich Bisaccia, but it's through an extension, and it sounds like his title might get adjusted too. So I'll share that with you in about 10 minutes. The accountability thing, optics only means so much, and a press conference only means so much. I just hated his end of the season press conference. It was a lot of laughs and jokes, which is fine. I'm not demanding that he get up there and kick and scream and yell and be a jerk. Okay. But I think there's a middle ground to be found in between kicking, screaming, being a jerk, and it's a stand-up comedy routine about Keyshawn Nixon kind of openly defying maybe what his coaches want. Right. So I don't think Cone is barking up the wrong tree. And when we talk about practice habits and attention to details, something the Packers really never once got their arms around all year long. And Matt LaFleur continued to talk about it. It's his job to hold his guys accountable to get him to embrace those things, right? So I think Cone's definitely barking up the right tree. One more call, and then we'll take a break, get to this Packers news. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Tony from Texas. Grant,
Tony.
Condolences to Bloody. Bloody, your dad sounds like an awesome guy, and I'm glad that Badgers got a win for him. So shout out Greg Gard. I noticed that Cone did not mention Luke Fickell. I didn't know where Luke Fickell stands with Cone, but no mention of him. But I do want to dive into football here, and I got to give a shout out to Corey from Tosa. He mentioned, the Bills, they had some bad luck. And Corey, I got to say, the Chiefs make their own luck. And Jeff Janis does catch that ball. If it's
the Kincaid catch, he probably would have. Yeah, those are the 2 types of grabs that Janis made. The one that Kincaid couldn't make.
Yeah, and I know you're up against it, but I got to mention, if Mahomes wins this game, you put him up there at the pantheon of Mount Rushmore of Jordan, Gretzky, even Derek Jeter. These are the ultimate winners. They win. Mahomes' stats look like crap all year. Don't give a damn. What does he do in crunch time? What does he do in the playoffs? The guy's a magician. The guy's awesome. The Chiefs are going to three-peat. I'm not going to watch the game. You don't believe me? I'm a referee. I'm going to scout players and flirt with moms, Grant. I'm not watching the game. You tell me all about it that next Monday, buddy.
I'll get you a good recap 2 weeks from today, Tony. Yeah, you mentioned, Mahomes doesn't have the numbers. His numbers are kind of, I don't know what his numbers are. I don't know what his touchdown interception ratio was. I don't know how many yards he had. No idea. Those things don't stick in my brain, and I don't need them. I don't feel like I need to know, where is he in passing yards? Where is he in touchdowns? I watch the games on the weekend. We talk about the games. The numbers, they might be a good reference point for certain conversations, But in terms of talking about who's going to win games, who's going to win the Super Bowl, or reacting games after the fact, I don't find any of those statistics to really be additive on this show. On other shows, sure, not on this show and the way that we do it. I mean, that's not to say that we're stupid or unscientific. It's just, do you care? Well, Mahomes this year was actually 7th in passing yard. I don't care. That's not interesting to me. What's interesting, and what I said in the first segment, is how this Chiefs team went from, in a span of 6 years, this high-flying, explosive, improvisational offense that could score anywhere, anytime. They went from that to now, really 4 or 5 years later, if we go back a year or two, to a team that looks just like the Patriots did at the end. And Brady had a hose to the end, but Brady didn't feel the need to air the ball out just to show that he could. There were years where he had to. That Super Bowl against Nick Foles, when Matt Patricia's defense took an absolute dump, Brady almost won that shootout. He had that capability, but in a lot of his Super Bowls, right, or playoff games, not just Super Bowls, because a lot of these most meaningful playoff, they're not always the Super Bowl, right? And we see that in college football too. Sometimes the Super Bowl is not a fair fight. Sometimes it's not close. And the actual championship winning games or championship winning moments can happen in a divisional round or in the conference championship game. And maybe if Mahomes blows out the Eagles, and I don't think he will, but we'll look back at the Bills game, right, as that turning point. That's what we'll reference. In conference championship games, divisional round games, Brady, in a lot of instances, at the end of the game when a play needed to be made, it wouldn't be some piss missile 60 yards down the field. It wouldn't be some back shoulder timing throw, the likes of which drove me bananas with Rodgers at the end because they just seem so low percentage. But it's like, well, that's how we're going to do it. We have some unspoken connection, and I'm going to signal you with a fart and a flick. No. Watch the Patriots. Watch the Chiefs in their biggest, most important playoff moments. What are they doing? Little swing pass, little slant, little bubble screen that's perfectly executed. It's called at the perfect time. The ball's delivered precisely when it should be delivered, in the exact placement it should be delivered, and it works. It's not laser light show, air raid, Phil Longo, run and gun, slapping ass football. That's not what it is. It's mechanical and precise, and it's almost cold. It's cold, it's steely and cold, and there's not a lot of warmth and flash and energy to it. It's just high level execution on concepts that have obviously been drilled over and over and over and over again for that moment. And that's what the Packers lacked for all those years. That's what the Patriots did better than anyone else. And it just strikes me so clearly. And it's all I could think about last night getting ready for bed. That, and I couldn't find my toothbrush because it was driving me nuts too. So I guess it was two things. It was my toothbrush and then the Patriots. I found it. So I have clean teeth today. But the Patriots, it's not just that the Chiefs are winning over and over again, and they're going to another Super Bowl like the Patriots did forever. It looks the same. That's what I can't get out of my mind, is in a span of 4 or 5 years, the Chiefs went from this young, kind of whimsical, explosive offense to this cold, heartless, precise, simple execution machine, the likes of which we've only really seen repeatedly, at least at the highest level, with Brady and McDaniels at the end. It just looks so similar. Let's take a couple-minute break. I'll give you some Packers news coming up next. It's the Wisco Sports Show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
End of game where Matt called a timeout, he thought you guys were going to go for it. Does there need to be better communication between you two on the sideline to know, okay, if we get to this yard line, we're comfortable setting Brandon up?
I think Coach and I had a really good conversation about it. I think, he's covered what he was thinking, what he wanted to do, and I'll just leave it at that.
That's a question and answer. Matt Schneidman of The Athletic and Rich Bisaccia. That was after the Bears game when LaFleur took a timeout for a reason that made no sense really in any world, whether they were kicking or going for it. And then LaFleur explained, well, I thought maybe we were going to go, and then it turns out that we were going to kick, and it was just a cluster. And Rich Bisaccia saying, I think we had great conversations. I can't imagine you did. If you had great conversations, you guys went your separate way on the sideline and forgot everything that you were conversing about. because none of the decision making outside of those, after those conversations, made any sense. I play you that cut because Rich Bisaccia has been extended as special teams coach of the Green Bay Packers, plus maybe some additional duties. And I'll give you the details. This is from Tom Silverstein's reporting in the Journal Sentinel. Go read his story, give him the clicks, buy the paper if you can. I don't really love just reading verbatim what someone has reported because I'm not stealing because I'm crediting Tom, but I want you guys to go read this if you can. If you subscribe or you can get a paper every once in a while when there's a big time story or reported something great, just buy one at a newsstand at Quick Trip. They're not that expensive. It feels nice to read a newspaper anyways. So I'm going to read you some of this. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. I feel a little bit bad doing this, but again, Tom Silverstein, Journal Sentinel. Green Bay Packers coach Matt LaFleur has made 2 moves, signing assistant head coach / special teams coordinator Rich Bisaccia to an extension and hiring defensive consultant Luke Getsy to a full-time position as senior offensive assistant. Source said, Bisaccia, one of the highest paid special teams coordinators in the NFL, had 1 year remaining on his contract, according to a source. It is believed another year was added, guaranteeing that Bisaccia, 64, would have plenty of incentive to stick around at least 2 more years. There were league sources who said there were rumblings that Bisaccia might retire, but the new deal assures he'll return as special teams coordinator and LaFleur's game management advisor. So I didn't know he only had 1 year left on his deal. I don't pretend to be an expert in all these things. Typically, head coaches don't coach out the rest of their contract. You don't let a coach in a lame duck year unless you're the Cowboys, right? You either fire the coach or extend the coach. I don't know if that logic is applied to assistants. Seems to me, stand to reason that it would. So extending Rich Bisaccia at this moment in time isn't totally shocking. If we're using logic that's widely applied to head coaches, I would assume it applies to assistants too. So you give them another year. I also... reading the tea leaves on some of the reporting and some of the things that came out, for example, the Cowboys have interest in Rich Bisaccia, right? We heard that. And now I'm hearing from Tom Silverstein, who again writes, and I quote, there were league sources who said there were rumblings that Bisaccia might retire. So there were murmurs about murmurs that were saying Bisaccia might retire. I'm starting to wonder, between the Cowboys buzz, which maybe it was real, but it's pretty clear now, especially after the introductory press conference with the Joneses and with Brian Schottenheimer today. It kind of seemed like Schottenheimer was the guy all along. It was a pretty brief search. They didn't interview 15 people. So the fact that Bisaccia's name was mentioned, it's just kind of odd. If it would have been mentioned for one of the other jobs, okay. But the fact that it was mentioned for the Cowboys job, the Cowboys who seem to have no interest in hiring anyone other than Brian Schottenheimer, to me, this is just my theory. Bisaccia's got a hell of an agent. He's like, the Cowboys might be interested. Actually, he might retire. There's way too many murmurs around a special teams coordinator who, by all accounts, did a pretty crap-ass job the last couple of years. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't, the stink does not match the diaper, so to speak. Like, I know Bisaccia's coming up on the end of the deal, so I get the extension. But we got buzz that the Cowboys were interested, even though I don't think they were interested in anyone other than Schottenheimer, which to me is Bisaccia's agent. Hey, the Cowboys have been interested before. Let's get a bit of that noise out there. You know, he might retire. I don't know, 64 years old, coaching in the NFL. He could do it. He could step away. Like, it's just a lot of buzz for a coach that's really not that notable. So I think, just from the limited tea leaves that we've gotten from Rich Bisaccia, he's got a heck of an agent that's got a lot of buzz out there, which is probably helping him get not just an extension, but probably a pretty lucrative one and maybe an additional title. It's what agents are for. His agent's doing a good job. I'm not just ripping it. That's just how I read this situation. The special teams were not good this year. It's also been reported, and I want to make sure that I'm getting this correct, or at least put it this way. In Tom Silverstein's original tweet, I didn't see this in the story, but his original tweet when he put this out, let's see here. He talked about, there was some language about Bisaccia becoming a game management specialist under LaFleur. And I'll try to find that language and where it originally came from. That worries me a little bit because the game management up until this point, especially this last year, was pretty poor. So I'd hate, So now we're going to lean more into that. It'd be one thing if it was like fourth down decision making, because I don't think Bisaccia is going to have a say in that. But for example, week 18 against the Bears, from what distance does your kicker feel confident? That wasn't properly communicated. So this guy's going to be some sort of game management, some sort of advisor to LaFleur during the game. If he can't communicate the wants and needs of his own kicker, how is he supposed to handle more important stuff? So I just have thoughts, and I'm going to try to track down where that language came from. But in the meantime, let's take a call. 608-321-1670. Thank you for waiting. You waited a little bit. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, this Clemhead. You're worth waiting for.
Well, and you're worth waiting for. Sorry, Clemhead, you've listened to the show for a while. I have this bad habit of saying, coming up next, I'm going to get to this. And then I come back and I take a call and we never get to that thing. So I wanted to make sure I've been talking about Packers news. I wanted to get to Packers news.
You got a show to run. Don't worry about it. I also want to give my condolences to Badger Bloody, and I'm just happy that he has happy memories and good thoughts about his father. I hated my father, and when I found his dead body in the backyard, face down, laying in the rain, I rejoiced, and so did my brother. I found out later. So to have happy memories of your father, that's a great thing. So, in a way, I'm kind of happy for Badger Bloody too. So, yeah. So anyway, that's after that gruesome thing's over. So anyway, I honestly don't think I think the Packers got fooled by Rich Bisaccia or his agent. I don't think he's really worth that kind of worry and woe. I think they should just let him go. He's the special teams coach, and he's failed. He's also the assistant. Would you say the control or the?
I think he's been the so what he's been up until this point has been assistant head coach. I'm trying to track down the language in Silverstein's story. I'll try to find that here maybe before the end of the hour.
Yeah, he's failed at that too. So I don't think he's worth all the trouble, all the I think they could do better. And the Packers seem to get fooled when it comes to these people saying, "Well, this could happen. You better keep this guy in your stable because you better give him some money and keep him because he could leave." Well, don't let this screen door hit you or the good Lord split you. That's all I'm saying.
I guess. I think he's a valuable coach. I think players like him. Clemhead, that's a good call. I found this language. It said, and I was staring me right in the face. It said, there were rumblings Bisaccia might retire, but the new deal assures he'll return as special teams coordinator and LaFleur's game management advisor. Interesting. All right, we'll talk more about this on the other side. I just want to make sure I have all my ducks in a row. We'll keep talking about this next. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
You know, to be honest with you, I just did a poor job preparing him for that particular play in that particular situation. Just figured out I got to increase my index for how far back I go to make sure our guys see a lot of different things. Kudos to them. They did a great job. I did a poor job preparing our guys in that particular situation.
That's more Rich Bisaccia after that Bears game. Special teams kind of hit the fan and then wasn't that much better against the Eagles, put the ball on the ground. Lots of penalties. I don't have a super high standard for special teams. Just don't mess things up. Don't commit big penalties. Don't muff punts. Don't miss kicks. Don't fumble the ball. If you can avoid those things, you're pretty good. Lessons learned over the weekend, the team that makes the fewer mistakes is probably going to win. So if you can eliminate mistakes in special teams, forget huge splash plays. If you can just eliminate the mistakes, you're in a good spot. And in at least the final 2 weeks of the season, Packers were really bad at that. A lot of mistakes against Chicago. And then that fumble and a missed kick, right? Some bad mistakes against Philly in the playoff game. You know, had the offense done a little bit more, maybe the difference would be special teams, and maybe we'd be having a little bit different discussion. Mike Clemens is here, called in to help us talk about this Rich Bisaccia situation. If you're just joining us, Silverstein reporting earlier today, he has been extended by a year because this upcoming season was the final year remaining on his contract. He will have a new deal. Thought, the Cowboys had interest. Oh, maybe retirement. I think that's the agent doing some good work to maybe get his client a new deal and some more money. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that's how it reads. Silverstein also saying he'll be back as special teams coordinator and LaFleur's game management advisor. Mike, and I know you have some details you want to share. Can I ask you, is it normal? Do they treat assistants like head coaches and that they don't allow them a lot of times to be a lame duck? Does that logic apply to assistants too, like it applies to head coaches?
Well, maybe for a guy that's been an interim head coach,
okay.
Maybe for a guy that's 61, 62 years old, like Rich, and that, I think the Saints job is still open, right? I mean, there's places where he could go. By the way, excellent reporting by Tom. Spoon is his nickname. And, the way things have gone in our business, this stuff all goes to the networks that pay, literally $1 billion for the rights for these games. It goes to ESPN, goes sometimes to the NFL Network. And so when we still can get a local reporter that breaks a story like this, it's a good thing. And so, yes, please read the paper when you can, folks. I know sometimes it angers you, but it's pretty much all we got left for news around here.
Yeah.
So Tom, breaking this story probably through the agents, but that, LaFleur wanted to make sure that was secure. Now, Bisaccia comes to Green Bay from the Las Vegas Raiders as special teams coordinator. And then about a year or two into it, LaFleur realizes, boy, this is a guy that's got 20 plus years in the league, a little more experience than me. Well, almost 20 years more experience. And I need to lean on this guy and to help me find players. And Bisaccia knows football backwards and forwards as well as special teams. And although you've seen, some special teams mistakes, perhaps the biggest one was when you had Bo Melton and Robert Rochelle, a borderline practice squad player, run down the field the wrong way and go to DJ Moore, who totally faked them out like he was receiving the ball. In fact, the ball went left. It's the old trick that Dave Tubbs, who was special teams coordinator back then for the Bears, pulled with Devin Hester in the backfield. And you saw, how great his special teams are now running for the Chiefs. That's the biggest blemish he's had. Maybe he didn't remind him the Bears could possibly do this. But he's a pretty darn good special teams coordinator. It takes with, some of the players that you have or the players that you've lost because of injury that have to go up. But the one thing I started to observe this season was, and this is why it's great to be at the games or down on the sidelines or whatever, is that when offense is coming off the field, Matt LaFleur now walks away from the sideline and he goes back and talks to Jordan Love. He goes over and talks to the wide receivers. He goes over and talks to the assistant coaches while defense is going out on the field now. And now, while Hafley is up in the press box, right, looking down, there seems to be more and more coordinators are working from up top now, too. Even Vic Fangio, a veteran like that, is running the Philadelphia Eagles defense from up top so he can look down. And so it's a headset, into the radio helmet. So I'm noticing, and you know what? It looks like Bisaccia's running the game then. And he is. He stands on the line of scrimmage. He makes sure that the correct communication about the substitutions is going on. He makes sure that core of linebackers understand what personnel is coming out. There's a guy that sometimes they have just hold up a card that says like 12 personnel, 13, all that, which, sometimes the secondary, if they're back and it's spread out and it's loud, they don't, depending on what the formation is or what they anticipate what the offense is, those guys need to know, what are they going to do? Are they two tight end? Are they one tight end, two backs? That kind of thing. So they have guys holding up cards. And Bisaccia could do that for as many as the first 3 or 4 plays, and maybe there's a penalty. And I don't know if Bisaccia is actually going to make the call, or if he alerts Matt on the headset, like, hey, we got a penalty. And then Matt's going to run up and make that decision, whether or not to accept or decline, those kinds of things. But Bisaccia's been kind of running the game until LaFleur gathers his notes, gets his script ready, then gets back on the sideline and picks up where things left off on the defense. And then certainly Bisaccia is there that if the defense can get them done in 3 downs and now there's a punt, it's a 3 and out. Now Bisaccia is there to platoon his group for the next special teams coverage.
I actually think big picture, the special teams were fine this year. And I know the rankings wouldn't say that, but it felt like most of the year they were fine. They had an awful week against the Bears and then a big gaffe against Philly. I know the standard when Bisaccia took over was don't be a flaming, smoldering mess, because that's what they were when he got here. Do you think he's done an okay job? We got about a minute. What do you think of the job that he's done and what you've seen from him?
I do. You know why? Because when you talk to Dontavian Wicks off to the side, kid that's in his second year, played a lot of football, a lot of college football, and I was saying, hey, I saw you make a nice play there, as a gunner, on that punt the other day. And I said, now you cut in here. We were talking, X's and O's and stuff. And I said, where did you get that? He said, Bisaccia. Oh, man, Bisaccia is like the smartest coach I've ever played for. I mean, he knows everything, backwards and forwards. He started telling me things about, there's things that guy spots. Like the block kick. That's the best example that we talked about. Those guys recognized that left guard that was filling in for the Bears was weak on that particular setup. And that's where Carl Brooks penetrated and got the hand up and saved a win for the Packers. So Bisaccia sees a lot of things that save their butts all the time, and that's why he got renewed. Not only as special teams coach, remember, he's also titled as assistant head coach.
I think they need to supplement a little bit. And this is a bit more big picture conversation. I appreciate the details on what you see from him behind the scenes and adding some color to the story, Mike. I got to run. I appreciate it.
You bet, Grant.
Mike Clemens. I'm sure maybe at some point this week we'll hear from him again. Otherwise, a lot of Mike next week will be in New Orleans at Radio Row, and Mike will be floating around IRL in person as well, hearing his clear voice instead of through the phone like I'm used to. 2 minutes, we'll get an update from Zach. Hour 2 next.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, Wisconsin won for an 8th time in the last 9 games yesterday with a dominating victory over Nebraska. Badgers offense was on fire, hitting 17 3-pointers, second most in the game this year, tied for the 3rd most in school history. But Wisconsin also got it done on the other end of the floor, holding the Huskers to just 55 points. It's been on that end of the court where Coach Greg Gard has needed to see the most growth.
From an offensive standpoint, if we can be top 10 in the country, which we are now, defensively, we felt we needed to climb to be top 25 in order to be really elite, because if you look across the country of who's in that category, it's some pretty high powered teams. So defensively, we were hovering in the 50s, and we need to continue to grow that and get better defensively.
Challenges facing Wisconsin going to increase moving forward, starting with a trip to Maryland on Wednesday. Terps have won 3 straight, so just a half game back of the Badgers in the Big Ten. Turning to the Bucks, they continue their road trip tonight out in Utah against the Jazz. Milwaukee got the 4-game road swing off to a rough start with a loss to the Clippers this past weekend. After tonight, they've got games against the Trailblazers and the Spurs coming up. Tip tonight is at 8 out in Utah.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Rural Mutual is the #1 farm insurer in Wisconsin for a good reason. As a company founded by farmers, they understand the ag industry and its challenges. Local agents offer farm families the best advice and personalized coverage. Visit ruralmutual.com to find an agent near you.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, Rich Bisaccia is sticking around as the Packers special teams coach. He had his contract extended, according to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Packers also hiring Luke Getsy as a senior assistant. Was most recently with the club as QB coach and passing coordinator back in 2021. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
The line judge on the far side, initially his spot was coming in about a foot inside the 40. Then the near side linesman came in and said he was short of it. They had 2 different marks. Let's see what they come with.
After review, the ruling in the field stands as called. It'll be first down in Kansas City.
Wow. I mean, you got to give. I mean, that's so close. It's whatever the call was. I don't think you could overturn it. Kansas City came in with a plan. Nobody could stop this. Here's the line. Does the ball cross that definitively? Wow.
Phil.
How did you see it, Gene?
I felt like he gained it by about a third of the football, Jim. That was just my take on the play. Tough play.
I agree. But the Chiefs take over on downs.
It's not fun. But to beat the champs, you gotta beat the champs, you gotta beat the champs, and we didn't do it tonight.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Appreciate Mike Clemens adding a little color to the reporting of Tom Silverstein. Not that the reporting needed color. By no means a shot at the reporting of Tom Silverstein. Like, yeah, nice scoop, Tom, but dress it up. No, that's not what I mean. Just adding a little insight. Some things that he sees from Rich Bisaccia. I don't doubt that he brings a lot of value. I don't doubt that. But when I read, and these are the words of Tom Silverstein, he'll return as special teams coordinator and LaFleur's game management advisor. Assistant head coach is fine. It sounds like from Mike that he really connects with certain players. I don't doubt that he was instrumental. He was at the dinner that they used to recruit Josh Jacobs and others to Green Bay. I think he's got a lot of sway. A lot of players know him and like him. I think he provides real value. I don't know that I want him handling or assisting in analytical decisions, kick or go or punt type things. And I also worry about his ability to communicate and assist the head coach when his main arena is special teams. His other job is assistant head coach. And the one thing they couldn't communicate well in week 18 was how close the kicker needed to be. You're on the sideline. You're not in the booth. You're working with special teams and you're actively working with the head coach. And yet in a huge moment in week 18 to beat a rival at home, you couldn't communicate effectively how much leg your kicker had. That scares me. That worries me. This is also a small side note, but I'll just reiterate this one more time, and I just tweeted something about this at Wisco Graham. We have gotten buzz, off-season buzz about Rich Bisaccia, who's a 64-year-old special teams coordinator whose special teams stink, right? Now, they didn't actively hurt the team most of this year like they had in past years, but they're not good. It's not like, holy balls, Rich Bisaccia is such an amazing special teams coordinator. How long could the Packers possibly hope to retain him? That's not the situation, right? And yet, in the last month, we got a report that, well, the Cowboys have shown interest in him. Well, the Cowboys just hired Brian Schottenheimer, and I watched most of that presser earlier today. They're never looking for anyone else. They were never going to look at Rich Bisaccia or anybody else. It was Schottenheimer the whole time, or at least that's how I read it. So why is that story out? They didn't interview him. They didn't ask for an interview. Sounds like they didn't even consider interviewing him. And yet we get a story about Buzz. And in this story, there were league sources who said there were rumblings that Bisaccia might retire. So we have Cowboy rumblings and retirement rumblings. To me, that's the agent. To me, that's, there's other teams that are interested if you don't want to sign him to a lucrative extension. His deal's up after next year. Well, he could always just retire. He's pretty satisfied with what he's accomplished in his job. If you don't want to pay him, we'll walk away. So the Packers give him an extension, which is probably the right move. I just read this as, Rich Bisaccia, man, you should give your agent a raise. Because this scenario was not buzzworthy, and you created multiple fronts of buzz. So I tip my cap to whoever's repping Rich Bisaccia. Let's take some calls. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, happy Monday. How we doing?
I'm doing excellent, Vagabond John. Do you have any condolences for Badger Bloody and his father before we go any farther? That's kind of the trend tonight.
Well, I just wanted to walk through my backyard and make sure there's nobody face down dead. I don't know.
Just check.
Avoided the airplane talk.
Just check. Just check. Hey, that was Mike and Eau Claire. These are two different Mikes who've had two very memorable and brutally honest calls the last couple weeks. I'm for it. I don't have a problem with it.
I love it. It is entertaining radio. No, hey, have you tried out this whole deep seat thing that everybody's freaking out about?
Geek seat?
Deep, or what's it called? Oh, shoot. The Chinese ChatGPT that crashed the entire market today?
No, but I saw the markets crash. I saw a tweet. The only reason I saw something about this is because I saw a tweet that said, this is the worst thing the Chinese have done since Pearl Harbor. And that made me laugh out loud. Not because, of course, Pearl Harbor is funny, but because, of course, that was the Koreans, not the Chinese, who did Pearl Harbor.
You've been setting up on World War II, but I gave it a shot. I tried the search function on the new ChatGPT. It's supposed to be more efficient, right?
Okay.
And already I can tell it's hot garbage, Grant. I said, what's the best division in the NFL? And which division do you think it told me?
It probably told you the NFC North, but I don't think that's what you believe to be the best division.
What a load of crap. Well, NFC North, my ass, man. Who played in the NFC Championship? So anyways, that's a long-winded bad joke about deep something from China that crashed the U.S. markets. Hey,
I don't continue. I'll butt out. What's your point?
Well, I was just going to ask you how the podcast went. Now that we talked about it.
Oh, so I'm glad that you brought this up. So you recommended Supernova in the East. By Dan Carlin. Never heard of such a thing. Never heard of him. And I'm not really a World War II guy, except now I feel like I'm going to have to get into it because, God, this dude can spin a story. I'm in part 2, and I think we're closing in on Pearl Harbor. We're talking about aircraft carriers now.
You got all the way through part 1 in essentially one sitting?
Not in one sitting. I mean, I drove to Marquette and back this weekend, for God's sake. That's 5 hours each way.
I suppose. But
I did break it up a little bit with some other things, but I kind of dialed in.
It's spot on, right? It's the storytelling. And listeners who haven't checked it out, no free ads, but let's plug this guy a little bit. I know there's a couple guys that responded on the old X app.
I think Bodie.
They're pretty fired up about it too.
Yeah, I think Bodie did. Maybe Croy. I can't remember.
In terms of sports, man, I know Rob Reichel's kind of in an interesting situation with this whole situation because he loved Rich Bisaccia when he got hired, right?
Yeah.
He was like the guy. He goes, when you look at Joe Barry, man, that's about as bad of a hire as you can get. Now, Rich Bisaccia, this is the hire, man. This is the truth. This guy's it, right? And he has a whole thing going on right now about Little Matt and Little Matt LaFleur.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's got to square his circles because this, to me, is the definition of a Little Matt move. Letting this get out, he's going to be your assistant game manager. Why? Because we all saw what happened to Matt Eberflus. We saw what an in-game coaching mistake can do, and what Matt LaFleur is just so freaking good at is creating fall guys. And there's been a couple of questions already this offseason of, okay, we want to be optimistic. We think this team's growing. It could go well next year. But if they take a step back, how hot is Matt LaFleur's seat? And by continuing to put up fall guy after fall guy after fall guy, it's like Russian dolls, right? You're just untangling this nest Because now we have another guy where if there's a catastrophic in-game mistake, that was Rich Bisaccia's call. Let's just get rid of him. Matt LaFleur, you're safe. So I don't like diffusing all the responsibility. I don't like it at Matt LaFleur's level. And I sure as hell don't like it at the college level. It's what Luke Fickle's done in hiring every assistant under the sun, leaving us all to wonder, what the hell do you do here? So that's kind of my take. Head coaches, lead from the front, stop hiring fall guys. Let's get to it. Come on.
So I think this builds on what Cohn said earlier, Vagabond John. Appreciate the call about accountability, right? Certain coaches really preach it. They act it. Other coaches, maybe not so much. I don't see this as a fall guy as much as I think he's a respected head coach that has utility. I just want him utilized in a way that uses his strengths and doesn't expose his weaknesses. You know what I mean? And he's got real value. And by the way, Rob Reichel, Ebo was telling me about this morning. I don't have any problem. Rob Reichel is a vested member of the Packers beat. He can have whatever Packers opinions he wants to have. His Connor Essegian narratives are just completely off the rails. Like, this man watched the Badger game on Sunday and was like, that's what they're missing out. They let that guy get away. Yeah, they did. And they're way better. So the Rich Bisaccia, the Connor Essegian stuff, I was digging around on Twitter earlier today because Evan Flood tweeted a video of the boos at the beginning of the game when announcements were made and kind of when things were set up, and they gave it to Connor Essegian. And I was looking at the replies of the tweet, and it's all these Nebraska and Wisconsin people like, they should be taking out their frustration on their NIL collective, right? They should really be upset at the donors for not paying for him. I'm not upset. Let him go. He wasn't good enough to hack it last year. I'm supposed to pay more money for the guy who wasn't good enough to play under his previous contract, which I assume was close to zero. I mean, for God's sake, he couldn't get anyone to sublease his apartment. I'm expected to believe that he was bringing in tens of thousands of dollars of collective money when he is peddling his sublease all over the internet. If he had any value to this athletic department or the next, someone probably would have taken care of that for him. And I see all these people on Twitter that, well, Badgers fans, you shouldn't be mad at him. You should be mad at your coach for letting him go. There's a reason Gard didn't play him last year. He wasn't good enough. So, again, Reichel, his Matt LaFleur takes or whatever, I take much more umbrage with his Connor Essegian takes because I don't believe those to be takes. I believe that to be delusion. He's not good enough. And the Badgers stuffed it up their rear end yesterday. They have plenty of three-point shooting. I don't know if you noticed. They hit 17 of them yesterday, I believe. They're doing okay without Connor Essegian. Let's take one more call about this or whatever. Then we'll take a break. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Good evening, Eric on I-90. How was your weekend?
It was outstanding, Grant.
Were you snowmobiling? There was enough snow up north.
I was.
My parents were in Barnes. They said there was just enough snow for the trails to be open.
I was up north. I was in Cable. We just ran around on Namakagon up there, Vietnamakogon.
Okay.
Just ran around on the way. Yeah, I had a great time.
I'm glad to hear it.
Time.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. I had to send you that picture because I knew that you would know exactly where I was.
Yeah, you were at the bridge. Spooner blows.
At the bridge. Yeah, but they changed that. They changed that. They put like a score up there now. So Spooner must have got beat by somebody.
Can't say Spooner blows anymore because of woke.
Oh, okay. Well,
no, I'm kidding. I don't think that's why they changed the bridge.
No. All right. You don't sound like you're too convinced on this special teams coach. You really don't. You said you think he brings value, but I don't think that I don't think you think that. I don't think you think that at all. I think you think he should be gone.
I think he's worth having around. Should he be a super duper highly compensated special teams guy? Maybe not, but whatever. Give him a title. I do think he's useful.
When you watch football now, watch these games.
Yes.
We're Minnesota and the Packers. We're not that good. We're not as good as these teams. The eyeball test. It ain't even close. It ain't even close. At this stage in time, we could not put together a game to play with either the Bills or Kansas City.
Okay.
Or Philadelphia. Don't you agree when you watch these games?
I don't think they're as good as these teams. I don't know that it's as hopeless, or I don't know that they're as far away as I think a lot of people are saying. I think Philly, the talent top to bottom on the roster is, I think the Philly has the largest gap. I mean, they don't have a weakness, Eric. So speaking just to the roster, I think the Packers are a ways off from Philly. I don't know that their roster is a ways off from the Bills or the Chiefs. Their quarterback, Sam Darnold and Jordan Love, that gap might be pretty significant, though.
I would agree. You're just watching really good football now, and I think we all get a little bit deceived during the season that we were playing good football. We weren't playing the greatest.
I don't like going back and saying those wins and losses didn't matter. Those are wins and losses. Those games happened.
No, they matter, and you enjoy them.
Okay.
All right, but the reality kind of sets in a little bit when you start to watch something a little bit better. You know, it's kind of like going to a restaurant and getting a tenderloin, and then going to Pariba or the Freight House.
Okay. Oh, I lost you, Eric. What was the first restaurant? I know the Freight House. What was the first one you said? Pariba? Eric, that might be above my my cultural scale. I think you might be enjoying some fine dining. Sorry, sometimes there's some gremlins in the phone system. And sometimes I use those gremlins in the phone system as an excuse to sometimes hang up on people. I didn't do that to Eric, and I wouldn't do that to people on air. But on hold, sometimes, between you and me, okay? Sometimes every once in a while, someone from, I don't know, the middle of nowhere calls during Bill's show, right? This is just between you and me. This is an exclusive, okay? Just like Tom Silverstein's exclusive about Rich Bisaccia. This is a network exclusive. Sometimes during Bill's show, someone from, let's say, I'm making this up. This is not a specific caller. This is the town that came to mind. Someone from Crandon will call. And just to paint a picture, this sounds like an individual that probably hasn't left their home in days. Like this person's holed up. You know what I mean? A lot of recliner time, a lot of talk radio time. And this person will call, very nice, and be like, yeah, I don't want to go on the air, but tell Bill. And then this happens sometimes. They'll talk for like minutes. They're just going and going and going and going. They just wanted to talk to somebody, which I'm not unsympathetic to, but I'm trying to, do the show. Every once in a while, I just go click and hope the person thinks, I must have got disconnected. Well, whatever. I'll call a different time. I do that occasionally. That's not what I did to Eric. I wouldn't do that when someone's on the air. That's not unfair. Sometimes the universe does it. Sorry, Eric. I know we'll talk more this week. 3 minutes. We'll come back. Suck a little Badger hoops. They gave it to Nebraska yesterday, and I don't want that to get lost between the conference championship games and this scathing, this white-hot report about Rich Bisaccia's contract status. We'll do that next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Wisco Sports Show. We'll get back to your calls. I'll get to your emails. The Monday mailbag coming up at 5:50. Send me your questions. GrantBills21@gmail.com. And I say this every week. Just kind of hammer home the point. If you have a question relating to the subject matter of today, the Chiefs, the Bills, Rich Bisaccia, Badgers Hoops, we're about to get into that. If you have a question about that stuff, then air it now. This is what the show is for. The idea of this segment is, let's talk about some other weird and wacky things. It's not to say that questions can't be sports related, but don't just make it an extension of, that'll just be more of the show we've already done. It's not really what I'm going for. You know what I mean? 608-321-1670. A couple of texts here quick. I'm a little behind. Colin in Fall Creek. Love Fall Creek. Says, went to the Badger game yesterday for the first time. Very fun atmosphere. More fun than the Bucks game, in my opinion. Student section ruthless with a siegen. Yeah, look, the students are back, so that helps the energy. We talked about that a little bit ago, a couple weeks. Bucks games are fun too. I enjoy them both. Bucks game is a little bit more of like a night out. Badger games is I'm dialed in. I'm cheering. I'm going to be probably a little bit more plugged into the game. Not that I'm going to ignore the game in a Bucks game, but it's like, this is a cool place to hang out. Expensive place to hang out, but fun night out. Clemhead Mike said, did you see the text I sent you Thursday night? I will go back and scroll. I want to say probably. 6 Foot Steve says, you called it. They mentioned it on the radio last night. 4th and 5th, the Chiefs sent a gap blitz like they have 1,000 times. And the Bills didn't have a play prepared for the simple machine-like thing that the Chiefs have done repeatedly. They put their MVP quarterback's arm, and they fell short again. The machine grinds on. 6 Foot Steve. Are you crediting me? I guess maybe big picture, I've talked about things like that. Not specific blitzes. I just think the way in which the Chiefs have turned into the Patriots, not just that they win in the playoffs. Yes, they win. They go to Super Bowls. It looks the same. It's not some fancy downfield aerial assault. Swing passes, slants, bubble screens, executed perfectly in gotta-have-it moments. Cone Roller says, also shout out to Pat Mahomes, the ultimate winner, literally scheduled out the conception of his child to be born during the bye week of the NFL playoffs. That's a winner. Good take. Duncan Holman says, Pagriba restaurant. I still don't know what I'll Google it. Don't text more about it. I will find it myself. Luke on the dirt roads, last text. Grant, one hot hockey minute. The Badger men have quietly stumbled and bumbled their way into occupying the 16th spot in the pairwise and are now theoretically the last team in the tourney right now. They just need to get that record over 500, among other things. That is a good hot hockey minute. Appreciate that, Luke. Moving on to Badgers Hoops in a sec. First, we'll take a call. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Excuse me. Who's this?
Denny from Holman.
Denny from Holman. Good evening. Now, I bet you know a thing or two about Badger hockey. I bet you could add to that.
I tell you, hey, that was just been awesome. The women are ranked number one. The men are up there. And the basketball team has been playing really lights out yesterday. They had I think they had 16 threes. I mean, it's just been great to watch them. And you enjoyed your vacation. I heard you were out there doing a little fishing.
Well, I tried. Let me tell you what, Danny from Holman. I got totally jebaited by the guy at the fishing shop. So I went in there Friday morning. It had been single digits all week, right? So I didn't want to go ice fishing. It's too much gear. But I can throw my fly fishing stuff into a tote that I have. And I just threw it in my trunk. I'm like, all right, if there's an open river, I'll go hit it. But I figured, there's not a chance. It's going to be too cold. I go to the fishing store on Friday morning, and I'm just kind of boobing around. I'm like, I'll get a a hat or something, because there's no way I'm going to be able to fly fish today. And the guy at the desk, when I say that, he's like, oh, no. You'll be able to find open water. And I was like, on this river? Yeah, on that river? Oh, yeah. Spring fed. There'll be plenty of open water. You'll go out there and do it. So I bought a couple of flies, not the end of the world. I bought a 10-day, 1-day fishing license. I drive out there. I've never seen a river more iced over. I don't know what this guy was doing. He completely and totally baited me.
I know. I hate that when they do that. They ghost you like that. That just sucks.
I should have called the store, but I didn't. Whatever. I got a new hat, couple new flies. I can use them a different time. It's just he got me all hot and bothered, and then I got out there and I mean, Jesus, even if I had an auger, I don't think I would have been able to fish. This river was bricked up.
At least you didn't take any phone calls while you were out there, right? That was good. You had some serenity.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not going to act like, look, there's not a lot of pressure on me day to day. I don't have millions of emails coming. There's not a lot of people trying to get a hold of me. The pressures of everyday life on me are very minimal, but some serenity is nice, yes.
So how about those Badger linebackers, Zach Bond, huh? What a game he had yesterday.
What is it with these guys?
8 tackles, 4 assists, a fumble recovery, and a forced fumble.
Do you think the Eagles are going to pay to keep him, or do you think he'll go get a big deal elsewhere?
I think he's going to get a big deal. I think Ginkle's going to get a big deal too. I mean, he deserves it. It's going to be fun to see Chanel play against Bond. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, Chanel, Bond. I wonder, because we're going to be at Radio Row. Bill was saying this yesterday. Last year, I talked to Chanel down on the field. I'm like, hey, I'm from Wisconsin. Can I get a couple of minutes? Yeah. I really just wanted some audio to send to Zach to prove that I could be a real journalist, and I did that. But Bond might be a bigger deal now. He might be podiumed up. He might not just be available for one-on-ones.
$3.5 million they got him from the Saints, and I couldn't believe that.
I mean, it feels two very different players, but it feels very Devondre Campbell-ish in that, like, this has been a fine player. Bond's been better than Campbell ever was, I think, but just right place, right guys around him, right system, and it just works.
And then I got a question: does that show you that the coaches are didn't coach him right and stuff? Because he sure looked like a superstar playing for the Eagles the last 3 weeks.
I don't know. Sometimes, Denny, I like to think that players can have a light go on in year 3 or year 4. What do you do for a living, Denny, or what did you do for a long time? Maybe you're successfully and happily retired now. Electrical sales. Do you feel like 3 or 4 years in, didn't you really feel like, oh, now I got a hold on this job? Like, it doesn't click right away. And I know NFL careers are shorter, but it's not ridiculous to think that a player might take 3 or 4 years for that light to finally go on.
Right, and it's what you put in, and it's what you're going to get out of it.
Mm-hmm. You know all about that. Electrical sales? What do you sell? Like wire?
Yeah, we sold wire. We sold control wire. We sold different conduit, and we had all these different projects. That residential, commercial, industrial. So yeah, it was fun. Yeah. I had a good time.
Pays the bills.
Hey, do you think we missed Rasul Douglas this year?
Yeah.
Man, oh man, we gave him away, didn't we?
The Rasul Douglas trade, Denny, that's a good call. And we'll get to Badgers basketball, I promise, after this break. The Rasul Douglas trade, I will defend it. The team looked to stink at the time. It's not Goody's fault that immediately after they make a trade that got him a 3rd-round pick, like, it's not nothing. If it was for a 5th or a 6th, it's like, well, why bother? You know what I mean? But a 3rd-round pick, it's a good haul for a team that looked to stink. And then all of a sudden they didn't stink. So if Goody had hindsight, yeah, he'd go back and do that differently. But at the time, I can't blame him for making that move. And anyone who says that trade was ridiculous at the time, I just think is unfair. Right? And now using the benefit of hindsight, we get to feel all smart about what or wasn't the correct move at the time. Speaking of corners, man, I watched Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean this weekend, and I'm like, maybe Jordan Morgan will be good, But this is another example of the Packers kind of having an obvious possible choice and not taking the obvious guy, Cooper DeJean. And look, that Eagles team is friggin' loaded, okay? They are loaded. And they have used free agency, they've used trades, and they've used the draft. To compete with a team like that, with a roster that talented, you just can't punt on draft picks. especially first-round picks. You can't, and I know Jordan Morgan got hurt. I know, okay? But the idea that they could have had either one of those guys on that defense this year, maybe it wouldn't have made a difference because their defense was still pretty great at the end, but it kills me to watch the Eagles and think my team, my general manager, did not perfectly and most aggressively use every resource at his disposal. I know it's disposal. I just think that's funny to say, at his disposal to help the team right now. Because for as much as people lecture, and this is the Cheesehead TV realm, and I like Aaron Nagler, but like a lot of some of the messaging you hear out of there is, guys, remember, the draft is for the future. The draft is for the future. The draft's not here now. It can be both. It can be both. I don't think Cooper DeJean is all of a sudden going to suck in 2 years. I don't think Jared Verse is going to suck in 2 years. Like, a player does not have to be bad early to be great later. Sometimes they can just be good right away and be good. Cooper DeJean is 22. So I don't know. The Rasul Douglas trade it's funny that that's what was front of mind with you today, Denny. That's why I love your calls. The Quinyon Mitchell Cooper DeJean thing was more front of mind. A smaller takeaway from yesterday, because the biggest takeaway is, oh my God, the New England Patriots are back. They even look like the New England Patriots. They throw the same passes and run the same plays, it feels like. It looks like, aesthetically on the TV at least. I'm sure the scheme's different, but the other takeaway is, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. Would have been nice to have either one of those guys. I would feel better about the team moving forward had they had one of those players instead of Jordan Morgan. Let's put it that way. A couple minutes, we'll come back, talk Badgers Hoops next, and then wrap up the show with the Monday mailbag. Submit your questions, please. GrantBills21@gmail.com.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
We're flying around playing basketball. This isn't right. This isn't. There's much more difficult things in life that you could be doing than changing time zones playing basketball. So I don't make a big deal out of it because I don't think it's a big deal. Go play where they want us to play next. All right, we'll be there.
It's Greg Gard from Friday, Saturday. Zach tweeted that clip out. I didn't see the full press conference. It was not after yesterday's game when they absolutely blasted Nebraska. That's fun. This seems fun to watch. Really fun to watch. And my biggest Badgers takeaway right now, it's not some X's and O's point. Well, they've really optimized the elevator screen. They've really, that dribble handoff, got that dialed in. No, it's that when I sat down last night to watch the highlights from yesterday's game, because I missed it, I was driving and then I watched football. I was like 3 minutes into watching the highlights, and in those first 3 minutes, like the opening salvo of the game, they hit like 5 threes. There was a dunk. It's like, wait a minute. This highlight video on YouTube is 9 minutes long. I'm 3 minutes in, and I've already seen more noteworthy highlights than what used to be like a month of Badgers basketball in previous lower, slower teams, right? And they've always been good and competitive. I'm not knocking previous teams. It's just a different brand of basketball. And everyone's hitting threes. And it's not just that they're pulling three-point shots out of their butt. Some nights they are, maybe. But in a lot of instances, it's like the ball goes here, the ball goes there, screen into Crowell. Look, here comes the double, zip, bang, wide open three in rhythm. Like the ball moves. And you can tell when threes start going down, these guys get even more excited and more motivated to move the ball and to get it to the right spot. Like it's almost a game within a game. Like how many times can we get this defense to dance like a little puppet before we finally just take the open shot and knock it down? You know what I mean? And it's not just threes, like Tanjay with a couple of wild mid-rangers or floaters or touch shots around the bucket. You know, Jack Janicki rim running. Carter Gilmore continues to make plays. It's rhetorical at this point in the season. Like this is just a really fun team to watch. They lit up Nebraska. They jumped out to like a 23-5 lead or something ridiculous. And then they just didn't score for a couple of minutes. They let Nebraska pull it within 5, and then they put the hammer right back down. Like, just this team's just been blasting opponents. And I love this quote from Greg Gard so much. Messaging matters. The press conference isn't everything. And winning in a court of public opinion or winning a press conference only gets you so far. But this type of messaging at the podium, and this goes back to, again, Cone Roller's call in the first hour when he talked about accountability, right? How it's preached by Greg Gard when he called out Stephen Crowell earlier this year. right? Accountability and messaging at the podium transfers into what's being said behind closed doors. I think the press conference can give you a little bit of a read of what's going on behind the walls. Not always. I think there are coaches and people who misrepresent themselves at the podium. Paul Christ was one. Paul Christ seemed like a total dip at the podium. And then you talk to players who played for him. It's like, yeah, he's just one of the funniest people. Like, that guy's hilarious. So sometimes press conferences can be misrepresented. I don't get that sense from Greg Gard. Again, this soundbite, like, this is the type of energy I want coming from the leader of a program.
We're flying around playing basketball. This isn't right. This isn't, there's much more difficult things in life that you could be doing than changing time zones, playing basketball. So I don't make a big deal out of it because I don't think it's a big deal. Go play where they want us to play next. All right, we'll be there.
There was a moment in yesterday's game, also a basketball thing to monitor. I've been critical is probably not the right word. I have been cockeyed, let's say. I've had an eyebrow raised at the performance and the effectiveness of Max Klesmit this season. He seemed a little lost. And he's been in and out of the lineup with injuries. And he got off to a poor shooting start, then he got hurt. And I think his shooting woes have affected other parts of his game. You'll see him have a defensive hiccup. And he's not a guy, look, he can't have defensive hiccups because this is not defensively a stalwart type of team that we've seen in the past. Klesmit is one guy I expect late in a game to be able to man up his guy. I can't have him having defensive brain farts. It's not Connor Essegian where it's just like, okay, whatever. We don't expect anything from you. Like, Klesmit's got to be a dog. I also can't have him turning the ball over. And in previous games, the game at Rutgers, for example, there was a stretch early in the second half where Klesmit had a botched defensive assignment and then a turnover and then a missed shot. He's just trying to grab his footing. He hit a 3 at one point in last night's game. Again, I only watched the highlights, where the reaction was so strong. It's almost like he looked up and he's like, thank you, God. Like, he just and then on the other end, he immediately turns around, makes a defensive play where he draws the offensive foul on a screen where the guy wasn't set. And then he gave the guy a little look as if to say, yo, what's up? Like, he's just getting a little bit of that swagger back. And I don't think of Max Klesmit as a guy who relies on swagger. Like, I don't think he's that type of player. But the season that he's had up until this point, I think needs a little swagger. He needs to see some shots go down, and he needs to get some confidence back, especially because he's like, look, we can play Carter Gilmore. I mean, you can play Xavier Amos. You can play other players over Klesmit. It's not like you don't have any other options. I'm not saying that Greg Gard's trying to work him out of the rotation or the lineup, but if his shots aren't falling and he doesn't really seem with it on defense, or if he's turning the ball over, it's like, man, we got 3 other guys who can get hot from 3 and can do well enough defensively. You know what I mean? So I think Klesmit has struggled to find his footing a little bit. They are a much better team when he is focused and excelling in his role. And I think just simply seeing some 3-point shots go down is going to bolster his confidence and kind of his energy in other spots. I don't think he's a guy, he's not like a player like Jazz, where he's like, he needs the showmanship and he needs the juice. I don't think that's it. He just needs a couple shots to go in to kind of round out his role and feel confident in it. You know what I mean? So that's an actual basketball take from the weekend as well. Couple of texts. Kyle and Milton. The looming question for Badger Soups, especially come tournament time, can elite guard play offset a team with an elite big? Because we know Crowell will get absolutely bullied. Am I a dummy for maybe hoping that Crowell... Here we go. I'm going to stick my head in the beaver trap again. Am I so wrong? Am I so delusional for thinking maybe Crowell has taken a little bit of a step this year? If Oren Burks can take steps in year 4 and 5, why not Stephen Crowell in year 4 or 5? Whatever year it is, I don't know. You know, I wouldn't bet on it, but they're going to need good, physical, efficient, turnover-free play from Tanjay and Blackwell, especially. And McGee, I don't know that we've talked about how important and how crucial McGee has been. Just a guy who can get half of his 3-point shots to go. And him and Blackwell are just the nastiest rebounders. They just get in there. They're almost like wrestlers on a basketball court. Their positioning and their leaping ability, but just their physicality to come down with the ball. They're so dense. They're just like, they're cannonballs with legs. So I don't know that we've talked enough about McGee. He plays a role too. I don't know which team's elite, what elite bigs we're talking about. Illinois is always in that mix. I don't know, Kyle. I don't know. I'll just hit you with an I don't know. Cop out. Coyote Mike said the refs never even called the chain crew out to measure that 4th down spot. Interesting. Why not? I don't know. It's a crapshoot spotting the ball. I kind of think he got it. Guess what, though? Josh Allen is superhuman. Like, get a yard. Referees are going to be pretty liberal typically with the spot when the pile falls forward. It's pretty hard to not get that call. And I think that's a Joe Brady thing, too. Ross Tucker was on with Bill earlier today. It's like, why are you so obsessed with running the tush push? Spread the defense out. Don't pack the defense in. Spread the defense out. You don't need to get in 22 personnel. You don't even need a player in the backfield. I always like the idea of spreading a team out to run, packing them into pass. Not always, but I think it's a good offensive principle, especially in short yardage or in goal line situations. Pack it into pass. It's easier to conceal receivers or tight ends that might be popping out. Spread it out to run. Fewer bodies, fewer challenges or obstacles for the ball carrier to make miss. I don't think it behooves the Bills to tush push with Josh Allen the way that it behooves the Eagles. I don't think it's necessary. Spread it out, run it like a normal play, and dare a defender to step up in a hole in a normal down and distance type of set to stop Josh Allen, because I think they're going to struggle to do so. So quarterback power or just a quarterback draw. I like Josh Allen's chances better in that. I don't need him being pushed. He's Josh Allen, So I want to feel bad for him, but Dalton Kincaid's got to catch the ball, and they need to be able to pick up a 4th and 1 when their quarterback is, Superman. He's that big. He's that strong. Johnny Driftless says, is a Sejan's apartment still available for rent? I don't know. I haven't seen him post. Cone Roller's typically been our correspondent on that. I always see him sharing. He's trying to help a former Badger out, fellow Badger. I don't know if they're still considered. He's at Nebraska now. I don't know why people are still hung up on a Sejan. We saw yesterday why they moved on. He didn't have a role here. They have guys who are better than him. So I don't know. I think it's Badger fans who were so obsessed with the idea of a Sejan last year that he was being done dirty and the coaches weren't playing because they had some sort of bias, and now they need to rectify that and confirm that. People are dumb. 3 minutes. We're going to come back. We're going to wrap up the show with the Monday mailbag. So email your questions, grantbills21 at gmail.com. I prefer they're not sports related. Anything about life, anything. They can be sports related too, but we've been doing sports for the last 2 hours. So the idea of the segment, number one, the idea of the segment is alliteration, Monday and mailbag. But second, it's like, let's work in some other random topics that could take us down some fun paths. So we'll wrap up the Wisco Sports Show next. Send me your emails.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes.
Hindsight, yeah, you go back and
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Because the mail never stops.
Charles, we'll be writing to you. Ah, she's got mail. That's the name of the book.
That's it, honey. There's never a let up. It's relentless. Every day it piles up more and more and more, and you got to get it up. And the more you get out, the more it keeps coming in.
The Monday mailbag. The concept is we get away from sports for a couple minutes and maybe talk about some weird, wacky things. It could be sports related too. But always what I say is if you just want to talk about Badgers basketball or the first hour and 50 minutes of the show, that's what that's for. You know what I mean? So submit your questions. grantbills21@gmail.com. If you fire one off here, still have a couple of minutes. Got a couple in the mailbag already. Let's go to Josh. Says, houses on a lake or river, which side of the house is the front? Roadside or lakeside? Growing up on water, I see this to be a common debate. I would say roadside is front. Could go with lakeside and roadside. What say you? First of all, I love the expression, what say you? Front of the house is the front where the driveway comes in. Backyard is lakeside. I never said lakeside. We just said front yard, backyard. Of course, you could be different. Just my 2 cents, which is what you asked for. So I hope you accept it. Tyler, this is question 1. Did you drive through Rosendale on your trip to Marquette? Yes, I did. And I did not go a mile per hour over the speed limit. I did on the way up, not on the way back, because my way back took me a little bit farther east. Question 2, a twofer, says, what are you looking forward to most and least next week on Radio Row in New Orleans? What I'm looking forward to least, getting up early, because we get there early. So I think last year, probably like 5:30 every day, which isn't the end of the world. Just by the end of the week, it's like, hey. But if the worst thing is getting up early, it's pretty great. Thing I'm looking forward to most, I don't know, I'm getting dinner with Pete. It's kind of a hilarious activity. I'm looking forward to that. A couple of guests that I got my eye on that I don't really want to talk about, because then if I can't get them, it's like, wow, some host Grant is a lot of swing. He couldn't even get the 2 or 3 people that he wanted. Tony says, Grant, this is Tony in Texas, everybody. What's your go-to Friday night fish fry spot? And what type of fish do you like? I forgot how to read, apparently. I'll read that one more time. What's your go-to Friday night fish fry spot? And what type of fish do you like? So this is a good question, Tony. Now, the type of fish might depend on the type of spot, because if we're at a smaller bar up north, you might be able to get bluegill or perch. Whereas if you're at more of a big-time chain restaurant in a bigger city, and by chain, I don't mean like Long John Silver. So not chain, but this is not some backwoods place where maybe you're getting bluegill and crappie. Like you might be choosing between cod and walleye. It depends on the place. You got to feel that out. My favorite spot for a fish fry is Flipside in La Crosse. And they also do chicken on Friday nights. In fact, you can also get half and half, which is what I did last time. You get half chicken, half fish, the side of fries, the coleslaw, the roll. Excellent. So that's my favorite spot for a fish fry, especially when I'm in La Crosse, obviously. And they're, by the way, helping send the show to New Orleans next week. So appreciate Flipside. They sent us to spring training last year. They're going to help partner with us next week to get us on Radio Row in New Orleans as well. So if you're in La Crosse, I posted something else on Friday. Go enjoy their fish fry. It is my favorite. It is excellent. Lots of TVs to watch the games as well. Plenty of space to spread out if you want to sit at the bar. It's also a great sitting bar. Some bars are great to drink at, not great to eat necessarily. Flipside can be both. Would recommend it. Tony, however, this weekend, I got a fish fry in Marquette. I got whitefish. Very good. And I was not the only one. The band that we saw on Saturday night, Eau Claire La Crosse folk, maybe Madison folk, maybe you're familiar, them Cooley Boys. I drove 5+ hours north just to see a band from my backyard. And they were talking about how they got whitefish earlier on. It's very delicious. Fakey fish. I kind of get pissed when I go out west to fly fish and I catch whitefish. Delicious to eat, though. And to be respectful to the whitefish, a native fish, unlike the brown and rainbow trout. So credit where credit is due to that fish. This is from Clumhead Mike. I'm a huge craft beer guy. Did you find any cool craft beers or breweries up there? We went to Black Rock Brewing and Ordock Brewing. I am not a craft beer snob. In fact, we went to see them Cooley boys at Ordock Brewing, and I asked the person, what is the lightest beer you have? There's also a dispensary up there, which I popped into because they just give it away in the UP. I wanted some gummies. And the girl there's like, you have to go to Ordock Brewing. They have this delicious blueberry beer. It tastes like a blueberry muffin. And I was very polite to the girl, but on the inside, I'm like, there's not a chance on God's green you-know-what that I'm ordering that. Sure, it's great, though. Rick says, hey, Grant, if Bill has the cheap seats, what is your live chat army called? I don't know, Rick. We're going to have to work on that. Bill didn't come up with the cheap seats. I name segments. I don't name segments of people. So maybe you and Clumhead can work that out in the comments and the replies. Cone, this is a heavy hitting question. I did read these ahead of time because sometimes Cone's has like 2 or 3 questions that exist in this segment, and they're always really good questions, and I don't know what to say. I think I have an answer for this one, but I did screen it during the commercial break. Hey, Grant, fathers have been discussed a lot today. That is correct. Some of us loved our fathers very much. Clumhead, his words, did he despise or what did he say? Hated his father? I don't know. What's the number one lesson you've learned from your father? What do you think the number one priority is for fathers when raising their sons and daughters? I'll hang up and listen, Cone. It's an important question. So I could say a great many things about my dad. So I feel like if I give one answer, it's minimizing the other things that I got from my dad. That's not my intention. You asked me to pick one. If I thought about this for hours, maybe I would come up with a better thing. But I think the thing that most comes to mind with my dad and the way that he continues to live his life is we're not sleeping in. We're not unemployed. We're going to go to work and we're going to provide for the people that we take care of every day. So I think that's the number one thing that if my dad's listening, he's like, yeah, Grant, and making a ton of money as a radio host is exactly what I had in mind for you. That's what I'd say that I get from my dad, though. Dude never missed work. Always putting money in retirement, putting money away from the family, helping the kids at college, just very financially responsible with not only with his financial actions, but the actions in your everyday life. Like, we work hard and we show up to, it's work. It's not a job. It's work. I apply myself to provide for those around me. So I think a lot of things I got from my dad. That's one that came to mind. What is the number one priority? I'm not a dad. I don't know. What is our number one priority? I don't know. Be respectful. There's nothing worse than a kid who just is the absolute worst. So maybe a cop-out answer to say, be respectful. But I think that's pretty all-encompassing, Cone, don't you think? If you teach your kid to be respectful of everyone, I think a lot of things take care of itself, right? You are teachable in class. You are coachable in athletics. You are a good teammate in athletics. You respect your boss and listen to things that are told of you, right? Just being respectful. I think that's a big picture thing. If you can teach your kids to be respectful and have them carry themselves with a lot of respect for those around them, especially their elders. I think one hand will wash the other if you can instill that in your kid. I'm not a parent. Definitely not the person you should ask about that, but that would be my answer. Appreciate all the questions. We'll do more next week. Radio Row. Mailbag at Radio Row. That's going to hit hard. Maybe we can do a New Orleans themed one. We'll figure out something special. Enjoy the evening. Be back tomorrow at 4 to talk more about all of this. Thank you for listening, as always.